I was too late. The door slammed shut behind me as I stepped into the house I had once called home. But the walls didn't welcome me. They were cold, silent, and something inside me told me it was already too late to fix the past. The shadows of those who used to live here had already left. But the real question, who, or what, was still hiding in the dark corners, waiting for me. The return. I hadn't been back in years. The village had changed, and so had I. My boots crunched on the gravel road, the only sound in the otherwise still air. My heart raced. Not with excitement, but with a gnawing, almost unbearable feeling that something was wrong. I pushed open the heavy wooden door. The familiar smell of old wood and dust filled my nostrils. But there was something off. The house didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. The echoes of laughter, the footsteps of my family, they were gone. Not erased, but buried. The fireplace, once filled with the warmth of our nightly gatherings, now stood empty. The chair where my father used to sit was overturned, its once sturdy legs cracked and splintered. I stepped deeper inside, barely noticing the dust cloud rising beneath my boots. "Is anyone here?" I called out, my voice breaking the silence. Nothing. The silent presence. I walked through the halls, each step feeling like 1,000 pounds. The house seemed to be suffocating me, as if the very walls were pressing in from all sides. Something was wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I could feel eyes on me, watching. My mother's room was at the end of the hall. I opened the door. The bed was made. Too perfectly made. I stepped inside, and there, on the floor, was a small object. A silver locket. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. It was my mother's, no doubt about it, but the strange thing, it was cold to the touch, like it had been sitting in a deep freeze for years. And then, as I turned it over, the latch broke open by itself. Inside was a picture of someone I didn't recognize. A man. His eyes stared up at me from the photo, piercing, knowing, and somehow dangerous. The hidden door. The house was full of secrets I had never noticed before. A door that led to nowhere, a window that never opened, and the smell of something ancient. The more I searched, the more I felt it. Something, or someone, was in this house with me. I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to believe that after all these years, my family was still here in some twisted, invisible way. I grabbed the candle from the mantel and headed to the basement. The stairs creaked under my weight, each step causing the hairs on the back of my neck to stand up. At the bottom of the stairs, I found a small, hidden door. I didn't know it was there before. How could I have missed it? With a sharp pull, the door creaked open. A cold gust of air hit my face, and I stepped inside. The basement was untouched by time. But there was a lingering presence. I wasn't alone. The memory of the past. I found what I was looking for in the darkest corner of the basement. A chest. Old. Rusted. Covered in layers of dust. The lock clicked open with a sickening groan, and I gasped. Inside was nothing but old letters, yellowing with age. My name was written on one of the envelopes. I ripped it open, my heart pounding. It was from my father, written before I left. It didn't make sense. The letter spoke of a choice. A choice he had made for me long before I was born. A choice that would change everything I thought I knew about my family. The last line made my blood run cold. Whatever you do, do not return. The house is not what it seems. They are waiting for you. The truth comes crawling. I dropped the letter, my mind racing. The shadows in the house seemed to grow longer, closer. The air was thick. Something was wrong. This wasn't just a house. It wasn't just my home. I ran back to the front door, only to find it locked. Panic clawed at my chest. I turned around, only to hear it, a whisper. A voice, so soft and faint, but unmistakably familiar. "Welcome home," it said. I spun around, searching the darkness for the source. But there was nothing. Only shadows. I was trapped. And then, I understood. The house had never let go of me. It had always been waiting. Waiting for me to return. But why? What had I unknowingly walked into? The door was still locked. The room still empty. And the shadows, they were no longer just memories. They were alive. The silent watchers. The house seemed to breathe around me. I couldn't tell if it was the wind, or something else, but the walls felt alive, pulsing with an energy I couldn't understand. I ran to the windows, trying to pry them open, desperate to escape. But they were sealed shut, just like the door. It was as if the house itself was keeping me inside. My heart raced as I tried the front door again. It didn't budge. A faint rustling sound came from upstairs. Footsteps. But when I looked up, the hall was empty. I could hear breathing. Not mine. Someone else's. I slowly backed away, my pulse pounding in my ears. The darkness seemed to be drawing closer, suffocating me, whispering in tongues I couldn't comprehend. Suddenly, the light flickered. The shadows in the room stretched unnaturally, bending like they were alive. And then, I saw it, a figure standing in the doorway. Tall. Thin. Almost translucent, but unmistakable. It was her. My mother. But not as I remembered her. Her eyes were empty, hollow, and her face was pale, like a ghost. The silence between us stretched for an eternity before she spoke in a voice that was both hers and not hers at the same time. You shouldn't have returned. The revelation. The room seemed to close in on me as I stood frozen. My mother's form flickered like a broken reflection in a pond. My mind raced, desperate to understand what was happening. Was this some twisted nightmare? A hallucination? Or was I being pulled into something far darker than I could ever imagine? You knew the truth, she whispered, her voice now barely audible, like the wind through dead leaves. The house. It chose you. I stepped back, my hand brushing against the cold stone wall. What do you mean? I choked out. Her eyes locked onto mine, full of sorrow and something else, something dangerous. You were never meant to leave. This is where you belong. The room spun as I staggered back, every thought clouded by terror. What was she saying? What did she mean? I had to get out. I had to leave, now. But the air around me grew heavy, thick with something ancient. I tried to turn, to run, but the shadows reached out, curling around my feet, holding me in place. I could feel them closing in. The Watchers. Those that never left. They were in the house, and in me. Why didn't you leave? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why did you stay? Her form flickered again, her mouth opening and closing as though struggling to speak. The answer came out in pieces, fragmented like broken glass. You were always meant to return. The house, the past, it never lets go. And in that moment, everything became clear. The house wasn't just my family's home. It had been waiting, watching, for me. My return was no coincidence. The ground trembled beneath my feet. I turned, and through the door that had been locked just moments ago, I saw the others. Shadows. Figures. They were waiting, too. Silent. Hungry. I was never meant to escape. The final choice. The shadows pressed in from all sides. I could feel them clawing at me, pulling me toward the darkness at the center of the house. The whispers grew louder, the voices of those long gone, telling me to accept my fate. But there was something else, something inside me that fought back. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to move. I had to get away. The floor beneath me groaned and cracked, as if the house itself was trying to swallow me whole. But no matter how fast I ran, the shadows followed. I could hear them closing in, their whispers growing louder, filling the room, filling my mind. And then, in the darkest part of the house, I saw it. The final door. The one I had never seen before. I ran toward it, hoping it was my escape. But when I reached out for the handle, I hesitated. Because inside that room, I knew, was the answer. The truth I had been running from. And when I stepped inside, I realized too late, there was no way out. The truth unveiled. The door slammed shut behind me with a deafening thud. I stood in the dim light of the room, my breath shallow, every nerve on edge. For the first time, I felt like I was truly alone. But it wasn't the quiet that frightened me. It was the stillness. The absence of sound, of movement. It was like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. I looked around, desperate to make sense of the room, but there was nothing. No furniture. No markings on the walls. Just the emptiness that seemed to stretch on forever. My heart pounded in my chest. I knew something was coming. I could feel it. And then it hit me, the walls were moving. Not in a way that was visible, but I could sense it. The subtle shift in the air, the change in the atmosphere. The room wasn't just empty. It was alive. Alive, in a way I had never understood until now. The whispers started again, soft at first, like distant murmurs. But as they grew louder, I could make out the words. You never left. I spun around, but there was no one there. You never left, and neither will we. My knees buckled, the cold stone beneath me sending a jolt of ice through my body. My eyes locked onto the far corner of the room, there, standing in the shadows, was a figure. A man. His silhouette was blurred, but I could feel him. His presence pressed in on me like a storm gathering strength. The figure took a step forward, and I froze. His face was familiar, but twisted. It was my father. But not the father I had known. This was someone else. Someone who had changed. "You were never meant to leave," he said, his voice not his own. It was a chorus of voices, each one more ancient and hollow than the last. My father took another step. I tried to speak, to run, but my feet felt rooted to the floor, as if the very earth was binding me in place. "What happened to you?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "Why didn't you stop it?" He didn't answer. Instead, his eyes, the ones I thought I knew, shifted, and in their depths, I saw it. A darkness. A void. Something ancient, something primal that had been festering in the house long before I had ever returned. The truth hit me like a wave crashing against the shore. This house was never just a home. It was a trap. A place to keep me, bound to the past. And now, it was too late. The figure stepped closer, and I felt the cold seeping into my bones. "You wanted to return, didn't you?" His voice echoed in my mind. I didn't know. I shouted, struggling to break free from the unseen chains holding me down. But his lips curled into a twisted smile. "It doesn't matter now. You are part of it. We all are. We always have been." The shadows swirled around me like a storm, engulfing the room. The last thing I saw before the darkness took over was my father's face, flickering like a broken light, caught between this world and the next. And then, nothing. The house was empty again. The walls stood silent, waiting. The shadows, once alive with whispers, had faded into the night. No one would ever come to visit. No one would ever know what had really happened inside those walls. But somewhere, hidden deep within, the house still waits. And one day, when the air grows still and the shadows grow long, someone else will return. Because the house doesn't forget. It never forgets. And neither will I. The truth isn't always what we want to hear. Sometimes, it's the silence that speaks the loudest. And the past, well, it always has a way of catching up with us.